Welcome to the community. Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. Today we're going to do another deep dive. I did not anticipate doing another one of these videos so soon after my first one. However, there are some things that need to be talked about, and they're all related. And it's what I call this toxic circle, because one portion of the circle feeds the next, and it constantly feeds itself. And it's bad for all of us. So, as many of you know, a couple weeks ago, I did a community post talking about Booktube in particular, and its toxic environment. And Johan's video, I mentioned in that community post. I will link Johan's video in the description box down below. And he makes several valid points, and I talked about those in my community post. But those points all feed into the other points, and it could just have easily been a toxic triangle, but I like the Ouroboros symmetry of the circle for this discussion. So, there are readers, there are publishers, and there are social media. Or is social media. And all of those feed each other, and it has become incredibly unhealthy. And it's also turning reading into something that it has never been before. So I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to start at readers first. Once upon a time, readers read what was in the library, what they heard their friends and family talk about, what was, on the published bestseller list, what they came across in magazines, or, friend of a friend recommended X, Y, and Z. And that's how you got books. And then the internet came along, and things changed. Way back in the day, there were all kinds of review sites, and slowly they were gobbled up by Goodreads, and Goodreads became the predominant review site. It's owned by Amazon, and it has become a very toxic place to review books. I have not used Goodreads for many years. I am on there occasionally, but it is not a place I go for book descriptions, reviews, star ratings, any of that stuff. I usually use Goodreads for giveaways and to see if a book is in a series, and if so, what number is it in a series, and where am I in the series. And that's about it, because the Goodreads community is not a welcoming one. And that is partly responsible responsibility of readers. And then there's the whole author problem as it pertains to Goodreads. And this belief by some authors, not all authors by far, but by more than a few authors, that just due to the fact that they wrote a book, they are entitled to no less than a 3-star rating. And that is the bare minimum you should ever give an author. And I'm sorry, but reviews are not for authors. Reviews are for readers. And if readers are dishonest in the review about what did and did not work in a book, they are doing a disservice to other readers and to the author, because the author has no motivation to improve their craft. And I'm not saying you have to only give out negative reviews. I'm not saying you intentionally write toxic reviews, but I'm saying if every book you review is a 4 or 5 star and there is no discernment as to what makes that book worthy of a 5-star rating, then your reviews aren't trustworthy. And the same goes in reverse. If you only give a 1 or 2-star rating and you can't explain why, your reviews aren't trustworthy. I am a firm believer that if you are not enjoying a book, put it aside. Do not finish it. Move on. Read something else. And leave it at that. You know, if you feel compelled to write a review, you don't need to review bomb the author with a 1 or 2-star rating. You can just put, I did not finish the book. It gets a middle of the road 3-star rating. Here's why it didn't work for me. And move on. You don't owe the author your time to read a book that doesn't work for you. As Amanda likes to say, if it fail, it fail. You know, not every book is for every reader. And that's how it should be. There is no pressure, obligation to finish a book that you are not 100% invested in. So, the next part of the wheel is publishers. Publishers have changed from before the internet. In some ways drastically, in some ways not so much. So, publishers have always tried to do a little bit of social engineering, and, you know, authors they signed, their, you know, be on their roster, and that's fine. That you're never going to get away from that entirely. However, with the advent of social media and the internet, they have become much more blatant and are far more subject to the whims of the vocal minority as to what must be in a book for it to be worthy of being heard. And it has become blatantly obvious. It has become distasteful. And there are some publishers you flat out know you cannot trust. And it's sad. Some of those houses have been in business for a very long time, and I cannot, in good conscience, give them my money anymore. And then there comes the influence, the conflux of social media and publishers together where they decide that they're going to get influencers to review their books. And I have come across this one personally. They, either on their application to review books for them or become an influencer for them, or in discussions with them, they tell you flat out that you're only to give positive reviews. It's a 4 or 5, and you can't say anything bad, and you have to post about it all the time. So, publishers are now paying people to gush, and even if they're not paying money, they are still providing a book for free, and people are, willing to sell themselves for a free book to do the publisher's work for them in promoting the book, saying it's wonderful. Whether or not they actually think the book is wonderful, they have agreed for the sake of an e-copy of book. They're not even always given a physical copy, but they're given a digital copy. They're willing to say for that digital copy, the book is great. So you can't trust any of them, because you never know who actually likes a book and who's on a publisher's payroll to do so. It makes the entire concept of gushing, vapid reviews from people you never hear say a negative thing about a book entirely untrustworthy. And then there's the author and social media toxic handshake, in which authors are having launch teams with or without their publisher's knowledge, in which they are requiring reviewers to give their books at a bare minimum a 4-star rating. I haven't come across this one personally. However, I have seen the proof from a very reliable and trustworthy source, and it is sleazy beyond words. If you as an author are so insecure that you are requiring people to sing the praises of your book, there is a problem with your book. It is sleazy and it is gross, and it just, ew. And I'm sure this author that I'm talking about is not the only one that's doing it. I'm positive this author is not the only one doing it. And again, all of those gushing reviews that are going to be coming out for her books or his books in the near future are immediately not trustworthy, because you sold yourself for a digital copy of the book. It's gross. It's just sleazy and gross. I know that if I get an ARC through NetGalley, part of that ARC obligation, and this has been true for every launch team I have been on, is that, and I've been on a whopping 2 launch teams. I don't do it often. Is that you are, in exchange for your digital copy of the book, you are giving your fair and honest review of the book. Be that a 1-star rating or a 5-star rating. You hated it, you loved it, you were indifferent, there were things that worked, there were things that didn't work. It's your honest review. And an honest review is worth more than its weight in gold. It is priceless. It is something that is trustworthy. It is something that says, I have read this book and I have taken my time, and here's what worked, here's what didn't work. I loved it. I hated it. It was horrible. But NetGalley doesn't require you to only gush about books. NetGalley doesn't say, and this is true for Edelweiss as well, it isn't a obligation to give a book a 4 or 5 star rating in exchange for that digital copy. It is, here's my fair and honest review, and that's what they expect. And that's great. Those are trustworthy. But authors or publishers who require their launch teams to only give positive reviews are incredibly sleazy. Just bottom of the barrel sleazy. And then we get to the social media, which has exacerbated the previous 2 points on the circle. And social media is probably the single most divisive thing out of all of this. Social media drowns out all the voices that think that there's a problem with a book. Social media drives the rabid consumerism of books that get purchased and sit on shelves and, feed the algorithm, but not necessarily the reader. The social media, yes, it has fostered some beautiful friendships in my own life in particular. But it has also isolated us as readers. We spend more time on our phones scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and comments and Twitter and all of that, those social media sites, than we do going to the library or talking to people in real life and going to, book club at the library. Because it's easier to just not interact. Yes, I host book club. And yes, those are every book in book club so far would have been a book I would have been more than happy to invite all of you into my actual house to discuss. We would have had a grand time. And social media just, it's giving us the opportunity from various parts of the world to gather. And that is great. But not at the expense of personal one-on-one interactions. It is necessary for the human soul to talk to other people and to interact. And I say this as an introvert who is not uncommonly heard to say it's too peoply outside in my best Eeyore voice. I am not a social butterfly. I have never been a social butterfly. But even I recognize the fact that humans are better together. And isolated readers are stuck in echo chambers. And social media exacerbates that echo chamber because it drives the algorithm. If you only read horror or you only read, romantasy or smutty fiction or clean fiction, and that's your echo chamber, and you never step outside of your echo chamber, you never grow as a person. You're never challenged. You never have to change internally to grow. It used to be that you'd go to the library, you read the back of a book, or you heard about a book from a friend, or it caught, the title caught your name on the bestseller list, and you check out the book, and you'd be exposed to new ideas and new things, and You would either read it or you wouldn't, but you would at least be exposed and be willing to grow as a person. Now, the toxic circle just feeds the entire thing. And there's somehow within this whole toxic circle of social media and publishers and readers, the fact that in order to enjoy a book, you have to be able to identify with the book or the creator of social media or the publishing house on some level. And that's just nonsense, let's be honest. You don't identify with every person you meet in real life. You have a civil conversation, you exchange, ideas and thoughts and laughter and jokes, and they may not end up being your best friends or even your close friends, but you get exposed to a wide variety of ideas. And that used to be true in reading as well, because, well, you just randomly picked up books. And you read them because they were great. And that has been true since the invention of the printing press. And now social media is, well, I don't see myself in this book, so therefore it must be bad. And I'm going to scream about it through the, annals of all time on social media because I can. And it's just hateful. The toxic circle just continually feeds itself. And at some point, the circle has to be broken. Some publisher or a reader with a big enough audience needs to be willing to step up and say, I've had enough. We are not doing this anymore. We need to do better. I need to do better as a reader. I need to broaden my scope. It's bad. It's horrible. It's right up there with readers who get physical or digital advanced copies of books and get on launch teams and either never read the books or read them well after, a book has been launched years later and suddenly, I'm going to read the book. Or they agree to only do positive things to foster that relationship with the author or the publisher. You're not doing anybody a favor. Somebody who may have really loved that book could have been on that launch team and done the author more good than a big name platform that got a free copy and then did nothing with it. Publishers need to do better. They need to do better in QAing. They need to do better in diversifying past their own particular political comfort zone and need to realize that there is a broad spectrum of readers and their job as publishers is not to social engineer the political spectrum. Authors need to do better and they need to stop the sleazy stuff. They need to stop releasing, different chapters to different booksellers. They need to stop paying for reviews and influencer reviews. They need to stop demanding positive reviews. And social media, readers, publishers, authors, all need to do better on social media. They need to do better at listening. We need to do better at reviewing. We need to do better at saying, my voice is deserving to be heard even though it disagrees with yours. Public civil discourse is the basis for civilization. And we are losing that as readers. We are losing that as reviewers. And it is a very, very bad thing. And if you don't think it is, you are fooling yourself. And can the whole situation be saved? Is there there is hope. But it takes readers, authors, publishers, as a community, individually, collectively, to say, this needs to change. When readers and reviewers come across, you know, you will only issue positive reviews or influencer reviews. They need to be called out. They need to be called out publicly. When you know somebody gets on a launch team and then doesn't read the book and hasn't done a service to the author, it needs to be pointed out. The blatant consumption of, monthly book hauls, which I was guilty of last year. I will tell you, I will read every book I purchased, even if I end up DNFing some of them. The blatant consumption of purchasing books to feed that algorithm, just so you have something to feed the algorithm with, isn't doing anybody any good. We're not spending enough time in the library. We're not spending enough time utilizing used bookstores and friends libraries and public libraries and university libraries. They're there for a reason. They have fed humanity for centuries. And suddenly it's all about building our own personal libraries that are so vast that we can brag about them. Yes, books are a comfort. Yes, I love books. And there are some books I will never get rid of. But as you know, I routinely unhaul books because A, they help my library. B, I know I'm not going to reread them, and so I need to pass them on. And C, they will end up in a landfill if I don't, and so they need to go to a home that will read them. I'm not mad at anybody, but it is something that every part of the circle needs to work on and change. We have to do better. There has to be less consumerism. There has to be less silencing of voices that aren't the loudest minority shouting from the rooftops. Paid, even if it's a digital copy of a book, reviews and influencer posts need to stop. Dishonest reviews that only gush about books need to stop. If you're, a bookstagrammer or booktuber that only gives negative reviews and never gives a positive review, it needs to stop. This toxic environment is detrimental. It's detrimental to mental health. It's detrimental to the community of books that we all love. It is detrimental to society at large. And only we have the power to change it. And it needs to seriously change and quickly, or there is not going to be a diverse line of thought to publish in books. So, okay, editing Tammy. Found my notes. Need to talk about indie published books for a bit. I somehow left them out. I think the indie author and the indie published thing has been fantastic, and it counters the attempt at social engineering that the big publishing houses are doing, and I fully support that. I absolutely think that indie authors need to continue what they're doing. However, and I understand why they do it, but indie authors on Instagram who are constantly working the algorithm and making reels and stuff is exhausting to watch personally. And they spend I don't know if they're doing it personally or if they have a media crew that does them for them. Either way, while it undoubtedly drives readers and sales, it is also off-putting at a certain point when they do 5 or 6, posts a day and your feed is just inundated and you're like, I have to unfollow you because my feed is too cluttered. It's exhausting. And how do they have a personal life? And I realize it's your job, but at the same time, sometimes I wish they had an off switch and they could just turn themselves off for a while and go outside and spend time with their loved ones. Okay. I have some more reader commentary I forgot to talk about. There is a portion of the community that spends a large portion of their time bragging about receiving hard copies of ARCs from authors, or their friendships with authors, or they got approved for this ARC and that ARC. And it's off-putting and unattractive, and it is making other people who aren't getting the same thing from authors and publishing houses and, let's say, NetGalley or Edelweiss, they're not getting the ARCs, and so they feel bad, and so they feel like, why should I continue to read? This person is getting all this stuff, I'm getting nothing, and I'm putting it more time. Why do readers feel the need to do that? I don't understand. I don't think I've ever done it. If I ever have, it was unintentional. I have gushed to my husband, but I don't think I've ever made a social media post gushing about it, something. And I never want people to feel like I didn't get approved for this ARC, or I don't have this relationship with an author. It's meaningless. It truly is. Yes, you can form friendships with authors, and that is great. But they're people. They're just like you. They're just like me. They're just people. And I do not understand the mindset of constantly shoving your author friendship, relationship in the face of others. It's not productive. It's not healthy. And if you're turning off potential readers, it's also not beneficial to the author. So, and the other reader complaint I have is the vague, gushing review that basically reads you the back blurb of a novel. The back summary of a novel, the inside flap if it's a library book, and doesn't really tell you anything else about the book. I mean, what was the point? Why did you bother to make a video, a reel? A reader interested in the book or the author could just as easily pick up the book and read the back of it. It's not hard. You didn't do anything above and beyond. So insipid, vapid, vague reviews do no one a service. And they're bad. They're bad for everybody, every part of the community. Editing again. there's a couple of publishing issues I forgot to talk about. The quality of editor at publishing houses has gone down in the last 20, 25 years, 30 years, tremendously. Far more grammar mistakes go through, far more spelling errors go through, typesetting errors, formatting errors. All of that has occurred, and it isn't being corrected on re-release or on, paperback release from hardback. They're just getting sloppy, and it's silly. You were in the business of language and how language is used and how it is presented, and you have a duty as a publishing house and an author and an editor and as a proofreader to be better at your job. It needs to stop. And they dovetails perfectly into my other author or publishing part of this toxic circle is the sloppy QA work. In my So Annoying video, you got one where, a 7-book series, 2 books in the middle of the series don't have the number on the spine, and the rest of the books do. What? Why? Why hasn't that been caught on re-release of the books? Because I promise you, those books have been re-released many times. But no one's caught it. The QA work is just sloppy, and pages are books are coming out with pages that aren't properly cut all the time, or the glue is poor, or the typeset is off ever so slightly, and either the print is all the way to the side, the outer edge of the page, or it's inset too far, and so words bleed into the spine. It's sloppy QA work, and again, that's easy to control. You just have to know and be willing to step up to the plate and do the QA work so that readers can read your books that you buy and publish and pay authors for and enjoy the experience so that they want to pick up more books by you. It's a simple QA work. And yet, sloppy QA is the norm these days. And let's see if I missed anything else on the list. Oh, last big complaint about publishers in this entire toxic circle is that they, for the most part, are unwilling to take a chance on new authors. And thus the rise of the indie author, which is great. This is not a stab at indie authors who may publish, indie and independently as well. But it used to be that publishers would take a risk on an unknown author because of the brilliance of their work. And they thought they could cultivate that market, and they were willing to put in the work to do so. And these days, that is not the case. Publishing houses do not take risks on new authors. They do not ever try to step out of the box in which they have carefully cultivated for that publishing house and try something new that doesn't meet all of their little check boxes as to what they want to do in life. And it's hurting themselves, it's hurting readers, it's hurting the entire process. And why? Take a chance. Sign that indie author who maybe have a very successful indie career and writes beautifully, but it isn't within your wheelhouse as a publisher. Take a chance. Sign the indie author. See how it goes. There are some amazingly written indie books that deserve to be published traditionally while preserving their indie rights. And publishers are so hesitant and terrified that it is hurting the public library, because the libraries, for the most part, don't stock indie books. They don't end up on the shelves. If you're lucky, they end up on one of the electronic services, but that's very rare for my public library system. And that just, it hurts indie authors, it hurts readers, it hurts publishers, it hurts everybody. It's just a toxic circle of pain that just creates misery that feeds itself, and you can't get off the treadmill unless you see the treadmill and you voluntarily step back and you speak out about it and you say, look, I saw this. This was offered to me and it's sleazy and I don't think it's right. And I'm letting you know. We need to do better as readers, as publishers, as authors, as people on social media. Just all of us need to do better. I'm sure there are comments. Please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.